greeting, Robcasting to you from this, the Robservatory. My God, what a day this is going to be, ladies and gentlemen, and gentle beings, kind people from all across the cosmos. Let's hope that there are extraterrestrials even now watching this broadcast. I don't know why they would be, but wouldn't it be cool to think that there are? I don't know, that would be pretty nice. It's great to have all of you here once again for another show of what I can only hope will be amazing. Now, as many of you people know, I have now opened up the floodgates to allow, well, just about anybody to send me videos. Not just about anybody. I'd like, anyone to who has anything to share or anything to show me, or show me your life, show me your house, show me your collections, show me where you go see movies, show me your favorite bar, whatever. It's been great. I'm getting videos. I've just got a few. They're starting to trickle in. But our man in Sweden, Mr. Stubble McShave, yes, he who nobody is waiting for the Wheel of Time show more than Mr. Stubble McShave. And you know what? Stubble McShave is here now.
Hello, Stubble McShave here, sending in a video since Rob wanted us to do that for our show where I'm watching the show from. And I'm watching it from this chair, and I have this footstool. And when I'm doing a drinking game, I'm usually in the sofa because of the proximity to the table. And I'm watching it on my TV and comment on my phone. And I have some of my movies here and some of my books. Most are not here, they're in storage. I recently moved and a few bookcases were damaged in the move, so they're in storage. The only thing that's organized are my recently purchased Wheel of Time from Orbit. My old paperbacks were in bad shape. And of course I have the hardbacks, some of them here. The others are in storage. And some Christmas decorations are still up. And as Rob says, have a better day.
Well, I have to say, it's really great getting to put names and faces together finally. Stubble McShave has been a long-time supporter and letter writer, and he's been a very vocal participant and member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. And what a treat. What a treat to finally see where he lives, all the way from Sweden. What I'm going to start to do, actually, is the people that send me videos, I'm going to string them all together, I guess, on a weekly basis or wherever I get enough to make a nice little chunk of video, and I'm going to put them all together and make them a separate video on the channel, because I think that would be, something kind of definitely fun to do. It's great if you guys are going to take the time to send me videos. I want to share them far and wide, build our community. How great is that? Well, before I get into today's topic, there is an important bit of news that I figured I would address here on the show. I know that many of you are wondering what that important bit of news is. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, yes, indeed, there is a new Girl Scout cookie. That's right, I'm not kidding. This is true. There is a new Girl Scout cookie. Meet the inspiring Lemon Ups. That's right. Scotty Andrews with CNN dropped this story today, as a matter of fact. It's the time when the tiny spokeswomen peddle baked goods outside grocery stores, all in the hopes of scoring a new charm bracelet or a party at Dave and Buster's. Hurry, clear a shelf in the pantry. It's Girl Scout cookie season. Now, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. I am, of course, a lifelong fan of Girl Scout cookies. I love Thin Mints. I love shortbread, trefoils. I love them all. I'm a big fan. I'm very, very happy to see that the Girl Scouts have a new cookie. Not to be confused with the similarly tart lemonades, the crispy Lemon Up wafers are stamped with positive affirmations like, I am a leader and I am a go-getter. Lemon Ups joined the lineup this year. They're stamped with those inspirational messages. It seems they're designed to inspire the inner Girl Scout in all who nibble them. I'm reading the article. What's more, the folks at Little Brown Bakers have commented or committed to using clean palm oil. That's palm oil that's produced sustainably so as not to disrupt the habitat of animals and people who live amongst oil palms in this year's cookie batch. Like all things too pure and good for this world, Girl Scout cookies are sold not only for 6 to 8 weeks until the Scouts are only sold for 6 to 8 weeks until the Scouts move on to their other leadership activities. But if troops in your area participate in the digital cookie platform, you can buy them in bulk before they're gone. All the Scouts need to do is invite you to the page. So pick some boxes up while you can. There are gluten-free options too. You might even help a mini entrepreneur earn their cookie badge. Now, I just want to be clear. I was not sponsored by the Girl Scouts to do this. I just think that Girl Scout cookies are an important part of the fabric of American life. And any time that I can help the Girl Scouts with their cookie sales, I will do just that. And in a shocking change of pace, let's go to our next article. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. When exactly did Sheev Palpatine fuck? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. When did he fuck? This dropped on Gizmodo today at 11:45 or 10:45 a.m. And this article is by James Whitbrook. This is the thing we know. But the real question isn't really if Sheev did the deed. It's more about when. Someone in the galaxy far, far away looked at a man named Sheev Palpatine, Chancellor of the Republic, walking prune, fascist ruler of the Galactic Empire, evil space wizard, more names than even me, and in their best Lando Calrissian impression went, "Hello, what have we here?" Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker establishes some intriguing things about Emperor Palpatine throughout its twisty-turny, fan service-laden narrative. Not only is the Emperor reborn, sustained by Sith external magics and his own hate to reforge his order from the planet Exegol, but he's been doing it in service of one goal: to lure his granddaughter to the dark side of the Force, to create an empress of the Sith that he and the living memory of the Darksiders before him could possess and influence. Rise's most bonker twist in all of this is not that Palpatine's back. That's something that, for better or for worse, Star Wars tie-in media has been laying the groundwork for a while at this point. It's not even that said granddaughter is Rey, who is forced to confront and ultimately reject the legacy demanded of her blood to take her own path, inspired by her found family and the Skywalker legacy. The twist that predicates all of this: in order to have a granddaughter in the first place, Palpatine, Sheev Palpatine, had to have a child of his own, a son, as Rise reveals. My God. And the question is, who was the lucky girl? He was a busy man between managing to keep himself secret from some of the most oblivious space wizards to ever sit on the Jedi Council, shadow puppeteering an interstellar conflict from both sides, forging his own autocracy out of the ashes of one of those sides, and then, well, messing about with ancient prophecies and evil magics while his subordinates bickered endlessly. Regardless of what he was actually doing, manufacturing a plan to seek out untold power in the unknown regions of space, one that also accounts for, say, your best underling having a change of heart and chucking you down a giant chasm in your office aboard your moon-sized planet killer, requires focus. So when in, amongst all that, did Palpatine have the time to be single and ready to mingle? Let's do what all Star Wars fans do: obsess over needless minutia and stare at some timelines. Let's start with some extrapolation from Rey's birth. Thanks to the Star Wars Visual Dictionary books, we know that Rey was born in 15 ABY. That's after the Battle of Yavin in Star Wars chronology, so 15 years after the time of A New Hope. But in case you missed it, the most recent Visual Dictionary for Rise of Skywalker brought in a new time measurement that reframed galactic events around the destruction of Starkiller Base, BSI and ASI, before and after the Starkiller incident. In The Force Awakens, let's ignore that for now and go with the BBY ABY standard, as we'll eventually be dealing with timelines from earlier in the Skywalker saga. That new book tells us that Rey is approximately 6 years old when she was left on Jakku by her parents in 21 ABY. Her father, the son of Palpatine, played by Billy Howie, and her mother, Killing Eve's Jodie Comer, as they attempt to flee the wrath of Palpatine in the form of a Sith-obsessed assassin, Ochi of Bestoon. Ochi and his ship, the Bestoon Legacy, catch up with Rey's parents shortly after this. The Rise Dictionary tells us that her parents perished 13 years before the Starkiller incident. Given that The Force Awakens takes place in 34 ABY, would make their deaths also take place in the same calendar year Rey was abandoned on Jakku. You know what? This article goes on and on and on, and to be honest, I just picked it to share with you because I thought it was sort of funny. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the rest of the article here, and you can read it for yourself. I just thought it was funny that they had that particular headline, because wasn't that a hoot? I thought it was a hoot. I thought it was pretty good. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. No, ladies and gentlemen, today's headline comes to us from Daily Variety. $121 billion were spent on original content in 2019. This, my friends, is a staggering number. And Gavin Bridge wrote about this in Daily Variety. U.S. media and entertainment companies spent over $120 billion on original content, including movies and TV shows, in 2019, per an analysis conducted by Variety Intelligence Platform. It is a whopping sum, fueled by the increasing investment of players, including AT&T's HBO, which expanded its production of original content by 50% to 150 hours. To maintain its market share, Netflix increased their content spend by $3 billion as the streamer increased its content volume by over 50% versus 2018. Of the total amount spent on content, 5 mega companies, AT&T, Viacom, CBS, Netflix, Comcast, Disney, accounted for approximately $87.4 billion, or 72.5% of the total spend. Disney itself was the greatest content spender, accounting for nearly 1/4 of the entire amount, splashing out $27.8 billion across their studios, networks, and SVOD services. When looking at the spend by company, a number of competitive tiers emerge. Head and shoulders above everyone is Disney. Next come the other members of the Big Five. And let me give you a chart so you can look at that. There is a chart on the spending. The third tier, the serious but restrained spenders, sees Discovery, Fox, Apple, and Amazon accounting for 19% of original content spending, the final 6 companies making up the bottom tier, including Google, Facebook, and Sony Pictures, contributing 8.5% to the total spend. Well, let me just say, that is a whopping chunk of change. I mean, that is some military-grade spending right there, ladies and gentlemen. And I think, my God, that's an amazing amount of money. Now, what does that really say? Well, in my mind, at first it says that how much money they're making. You know what? I'm looking. Oh, I hope I'm back. I hope I haven't been. I keep seeing that the actual stream is somehow. I hope the stream's going well. But the amount of money that we're seeing splashed out for content it's just astonishing. I mean, I've never seen quite anything like this. I don't think I've heard of anything like this. And all I know is that as somebody who is striving to produce content myself, I'm pretty happy to see that, well, the entertainment business seems to be alive and well. And I hope that perhaps somebody will pick up Tango Shalom with all that fat cash. But the other thing that does worry me, I mean, we've talked a lot about how Netflix is somebody that, you know, they've borrowed money. They've borrowed money to make this kind of content. And obviously there's a lot of people that you are competing with now, but to know that, my God, I mean, 50%, they're increasing their programming 50%. And anybody who's a fan of Netflix, I mean, they've certainly recently, if you've noticed, their interface has changed up, and there's a lot of they're now pointing consumers to new shows that they have on, and it really is quite impressive. I mean, John Campy and I were always talking about the fact that, well, are they ever going to get around to telling us what they're actually showing? Oh, you know what? I guess apparently forgot to hit return on the Sheev Palpatine article to put in the live chat. So hopefully, well, it's still not going into the live chat. Oh, because it's too big. Well, I apologize. I guess I can't. The Gizmodo link is too big to put into the live chat, so I apologize for that. But anyway, it's pretty incredible that they're spending this amount of money. I mean, we talk about there being a golden age of TV and content. I mean, I just over the last month, seeing things that dropped, whether you're talking about The Witcher, whether you're talking about Lost in Space, whether you're talking about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, whether you're talking about The Expanse, these are some Tiffany high-end TV shows, and we're getting one after another. And I for one, I'm overjoyed by this, but it's just incredible, the content and the quality. And what I was trying to say, I don't think I ever finished this thought, but with Disney having the best year ever, even that's it, making 11 or 12 or 13 billion dollars worldwide, or whatever they're up to as a studio now in 1 year. That's a far cry from recouping the $28 billion that they spent on content. And of course, Disney launched their streaming service, and they're going to have to jump into those waters where, if you look, I mean, if you go back to this chart and you see what Disney has to do. I mean, Disney spends $27.8 billion, and then you've got $15 billion by Netflix. I mean, so Disney is not just going to be spending money on their movies. They're probably going to theatrical features, but if you're going to rival something like Netflix, and I don't think Disney's going to spend $15 billion on programming for Disney Plus, but in order to keep their service vibrant and to keep people coming back, I mean, I'd be curious to see how many people abandoned Disney Plus after The Mandalorian went off the air. I don't know. I mean, I think Disney is a lot of fun, but there was definitely a novelty factor. That's why I talked about watching That Darn Cat with Elizabeth. Who knows where the show is going, or where Disney Plus is going to wind up after all of this, but it's quite amazing how much money is being spent. And again, I don't know if that's sustainable. I really don't. It's hard to know. I do know that obviously there's a lot of great content being made. There's a lot we'll see we'll continue to get this amazing bunch of content, and it's really great to see. I'm very happy that we are in fact getting all of this amazing content. We live in heady times, my friends, and it's fantastic to see us getting. Well, we live in an embarrassment of riches. I've been saying that. It's pretty amazing, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to hopefully contribute. As many people know, Lucas Kendall's short film Skyfighter that I edited drops on the Dust Network, and while they don't splash out a ton of money, but they are buying shorts to develop as incubators to hopefully make feature films, which is tremendous. I think that's very great. So I don't know, man. I would say that the entertainment business is a pretty great place to be right now. Let's see. Let's jump into. I'm just gonna get right into what you guys are saying. There was a few tips. As people know, you can obviously, if you want me to read or talk about your stuff, your questions, comments, you can either use the tip feature or the super chat feature. And there were people have been tipping when the show is not on, so I like to get back and and address those things. Vegetable Tube tipped. Very, very generous tip. Thank you to Vegetable Tube. Vegetable Tube asks, to the to the Intermix Chamber Master of Enthusiasm. The Intermix Chamber Master of Enthusiasm. Do you have Post-Geek Singularity stickers available? Well, as you now see at the opening of every episode, there is a Post-Geek Singularity logo that actually was created by Mike Bodden that I will be putting on our TeePublic page so you can get shirts and stickers and hoodies and coffee mugs and everything. I'll do that shortly. And yeah, I think that's a really good idea, Vegetable Tube, because I want Post-Geek Singularity stickers. I also want a Post-Geek Singularity hoodie. I've not even ordered my Robservatory hoodie yet, which I need to do. Other people have, but I have not. So you can always see in the link down below, there is a link to our TeePublic store where you can get Imagination Connoisseur t-shirts or Robservations hoodies or things like that. But that's a very good idea. Timbula the Spider Monkey sent me a tip, and he said, my new favorite game is trying to predict the exact minute in John's show that you realize the rocking machine is still on the shelf behind you. Well, as people know, the rocking machine is behind me, the 6-scale replica of Herman Mechanics' world-famous rocking machine that, of course, Stanley Kubrick used in A Clockwork Orange. It was actually a real sculpture, and I have both a 6-scale version and a 1-to-1 scale version. I've told that story in the past, but I realized that being on John's show, many people probably might not know what it is. I didn't want to scare any of his audience off who might not understand the humor of it all, or who perhaps haven't seen A Clockwork Orange. So, yes. Vegetable Tube, Vegetable Tube. Tim, I did catch myself this morning before I went on John's show, and right before we went live, but right before he always asks me, he welcomes me in the morning, I grabbed it and was able to turn around before he cut to me. So, yes, it is kind of a game. It's kind of funny because sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't. And Tim also says, is that a Yamato Girls Collection Yuki Mori on the shelf in the wide shot? My Mori, Yamamoto, and Nimi are my girlfriend's least favorite things in my collection. A little too pervy, in her opinion. Well, good eye, Tim. What Tim is referring to, Tim is referring to this. And as everyone knows, I'm a huge fan of Space Battleship Yamato, or Star Blazers, as we know it in the United States. And this is part of the Yamato Girls collection. And yes, I guess you'd call this Yuki Moro, or Nova, as we know her in the United States. And perhaps this might be a little pervy. They've never made great 6-scale action figures of a lot of my favorite Japanese anime shows. So, you take what you can get. Although, this is pretty nice. But it's fun because every day I put, different things up on the shelves to see if people will notice. Like, for instance, I moved Anton and put George Lazenby right over there from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. George Lazenby and the film just recently celebrated its 50th anniversary. And I was, as I'm moving things around, and I realized, I'm going to focus. I'm going to put the sideshow George Lazenby from On Her Majesty's Secret Service up. Because why not? Because why not? Why not do that? So thanks, Tim, for I'm sorry your girlfriend thinks they're too pervy, but those figures are great. Willow Yang sent me a tip and said, "Are you interested in the midi-chlorian and Wills movies that George Lucas wanted to make? I'm totally down for exploring Star Wars microbiology and endosymbiosis." Well, it's always great to get communication from Willow Yang. She is herself a microbiologist. Actually, I wish George Lucas would make those movies, if only because I want to read your reviews of them, Willow. Can you imagine if George Lucas... It's so funny because people like immediately rejected the idea of doing those kinds of movies. And I'm like, well, I bet he had an interesting idea for him. I don't think it was going to be Fantastic Voyage where Star Destroyers were shrunk and injected into someone's body. I think it would have been something, different. Or maybe it was. Maybe he would have delved into the microbiological world and delved into that. I don't know. But I look, if George Lucas was going to make something for the man who created Star Wars, I think it probably would have been pretty interesting. I mean, he knows what sells. He was always commercially minded, so I don't think he would go too off the rails and make something that was a little too weird. JB Bonifacio is here. JB Bonifacio says, Christian Bale as Beta Ray Bill suggests two-dimensional thinking. I think this casting is a one-and-done role, so maybe a villain like Gore the God Butcher. However, if he's down for a long-term role, Namor. You know, I was kind of hoping that an Asian actor would play Namor, but Christian Bale would be good. I liked John's idea of Kull, Odin's brother, and the uncle of Thor, and Kull, who's the god of fear. I think that would be great, because I don't know if he's going to play Beta Ray Bill. I would have thought we would have seen Beta Ray Bill in Ragnarok, but Beta Ray Bill, obviously a fan favorite. Anyone who read the Simonson run of Thor, you can't not have read Simonson's Thor and not love Beta Ray Bill. So it could be, but again, Beta Ray Bill with his horse face, I don't know if Christian Bale wants to do that. I think Christian Bale probably looked at how much fun Tom Hiddleston was having playing Loki and maybe wanted something like that. Who knows? We shall see. I don't know. Midnight's Edge After Dark. How you doing? Send in a super chat. Laugh out loud. How much of that $15 billion Viacom CBS spend is Star Trek Discovery and Picard? The Burnettwork. Happy New Year, my friend. Well, everybody over there, love those guys at Midnight's Edge After Dark. Love being on the podcast. You know what? That's a pretty good question. I mean, for CBS to be spending that much money, they did a lot of original streaming shows. But Star Trek Discovery, as we've talked about, you know, I've heard as much as $15 million an episode, which I don't necessarily disagree with. Like Star Trek The Motion Picture, they had to retool the show. Star Trek The Motion Picture had to deal with the Star Trek Phase 2 budget, the aborted TV series being folded into its budget, along with all the development that was done for other Star Trek movies that never got made, such as Philip Kaufman's Planet of the Titans. And the development of that is what led to the shape of the Star Trek Discovery, even though they put holes in the primary hull and elongated the warp nacelles and made them more boxy and square, rectangular than round, whatever. But yeah, I think Star Trek Discovery is a show that it costs enormous amounts of money. I've heard, I guess I've read reported, I don't know if we'll ever know, but that the budget of 10 episodes of Picard might have run as high as $400 million. I mean, that seems excessive, but you never know. I mean, I don't know what Patrick Stewart's deal was, but who knows? Who knows? Factual Opinion says, do you think the Prime Directive will be fixed in Star Trek Picard? I mean, when it comes to saving pre-warp civilizations if they or their planet is dying, you know, I don't know. I think that I don't know if the Prime Directive needs to be fixed. I think the Prime Directive, as it stands as an idea, is a really good idea. I think that non-interference is something, and the way it was accidental contamination, like when the Horizon left behind the book Chicago Mobs of the 20s on Sigma Iosha, and of course they patterned their entire civilization around it, which I thought was really interesting. And there have, of course, been violations of the Prime Directive all the time. I mean, during the war of Aminiar and Vendikar, Kirk just went in and blew up their computer system. For a long time, they were fighting a computer war, which seemed to work for them. People going into disintegration booths when computers declared them casualties of war. And then Kirk shows up and says, that's not what war is about, and blows up their computer. I mean, that was clearly a violation of the Prime Directive until they say, well, look, this isn't living. But, I don't know. I don't know if a civilization, obviously we saw in Into Darkness at the beginning, a primitive civilization is saved from an exploding volcano, which they say will destroy their planet. Okay? But they did that anyway. I don't know. Is that a violation of... I think what they really mean, by the way, in terms of the Prime Directive, saving a primitive civilization from destruction is not a violation of the Prime Directive. What I think is a violation is to actually get inside of a developing culture and change it. Not unlike back when we were writing for Sci-Fi Universe magazine, we said that the most evil person in the Sci-Fi Universe, in the Star Trek universe, in Sci-Fi Universe magazine, we said the most evil person in the Star Trek universe was historian John Gill, who, on the planet Echos, he decided to apply the tenets of Nazism to help their stagnant culture. And of course, it led to the rise of National Socialism, and they needed to use their neighbor, Zeon, as, not a very thinly disguised word, but Zeon, they scapegoated them, and Echos decided to turn them into public enemy number one, and began a genocidal campaign against them, even though they were more advanced and peaceful. So we shall see. I don't know what they're going to deal with. I mean, I know there's the Romulan civilization. They're dealing with the destruction of, I think, after the Hoba star went supernova. They're bringing in all that stuff from Star Trek that I didn't like, from Star Trek '09, but okay. I'm not going to hate on Star Trek Picard. I'm going to say flat off right now, I am very, very excited to see Star Trek Picard. As a matter of fact, I'm more excited probably to see Star Trek Picard than I've been in the last 10 years of Star Trek. However, what gives me pause is the creative team running it. It's the same group of folks, pretty much. I'm hoping that the influence of Michael Chabon would be better, and Kirsten Beyer, who was sort of spearheading the effort based on an original pitch by Brian Fuller, doing something along those lines. I hope it's good. However, it might not be good. And I will say this, I'm going in with an open mind. I want to love Star Trek Picard. I've always said I'm an easy lay. I want Star Trek Picard to have its way with me. I want to be left panting and begging for more at the end of the first episode of Star Trek Picard. I hope. I'm like Red in Who Learns to Hope at the end of Shawshank Redemption. And after Andy Dufresne says that hope is perhaps the best of things, we shall see. I don't have a lot of, I don't know. You know what? I'm gonna hang back, and I'm gonna allow it to wash over me, and I hope it does, because I really want to love it. I really do. And until I know otherwise, I'm going to love it. Roberto Suarez sends in a super chat and says, entertainment industry could fund Medicare for all. It's true. They absolutely could fund Medicare for all. The question is, would they? I don't think it's funny, because whenever you look at how money is spent elsewhere, like military spending, which perhaps our military spending might come in handy sometime soon. Who knows? But, the money that is being spent on entertainment is not necessarily, they can't do one or the other. That's, as we all know, that's not quite how economics works. And by the way, part of our healthcare system is a for-profit, I think, a broken healthcare system, because ultimately, profit matters more than people's lives. It just does. And we should flat out just go ahead and freely admit that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with admitting the truth if that's, it's always liberating when you tell the truth, I think. And we have to admit that as Americans, ultimately, profit comes before the health of our population. I've always said that I think that one of the first things I've never understood is, why isn't education and healthcare couched as a national security issue? It is most important to have the most well-educated and healthy population in the world in order to secure our borders, to secure national security, to anything that you want, comes from more education and more healthcare. And why we make both of those things economically unfeasible is way beyond me. The rest of the world's figured it out. Why haven't we? I don't know. Mark C says, a little money for a better internet service. Also, remember, Fisher-Price does not make good routers. Are you talking to me? I do not have Fisher-Price routers. I've got good routers. I've got great equipment here. I don't know. I hope it was all looking good. Factual Opinion says Picard was willing to let people die because of the Prime Directive. That was ridiculous and not okay, bro. Well, I mean, here's the thing. If if there's a supernova or something, does that mean, I mean, is the Federation obligated to step in if there's a supernova and move entire planetary populations? You know, on the planet Sarpedon, they all escaped into their past in All Our Yesterdays, the penultimate episode of the original series. And I think that you have to understand look, I think what they mean with the Prime Directive is that you cannot go down and take a society. For instance, I'll tell the story again. When I was working on the Next Generation documentaries, Ron Moore told a story, a Prime Directive story that they wanted to do. He told me a story that they were going to do an episode on a planet that was in the middle of a genocidal war. And as it was described, it was a Holocaust-like genocidal war, where one side was literally putting another side into ovens. And that the crew wanted to help this civilization and stop this genocidal war. And it was Picard who said, no, we can't, as abhorrent as we might find this, we cannot interfere with their civilization. That's a Prime Directive violation. And it would have been monstrous. It would have been a really tough episode about the Prime Directive. I think it would have been interesting. Now, what's interesting about that is Ron Moore was telling us this story. And when I sent in the documentary, I think it was the season 3 documentary that I had this in, Paramount Legal came back and said, you know, you can't tell this story in the documentaries because it might be seen that Gene Roddenberry was anti-Semitic. And it was so frustrating. I'm like, look, Ron Moore used the example of a genocidal war. His comment was literally one side was putting the other side into ovens. And it's not like he wasn't talking about Jews on Earth. He was using the Holocaust as an example of something monstrous, and there was something analogous going on this planet, so people would understand. It would be sort of an easy shorthand. Paramount Legal said, nope, you cannot use this story. And I was like, oh, okay, you can't use the story. But I thought that was a really interesting look at the Prime Directive. That was definitely a Prime Directive. You know, you definitely got a sense of what perils the Prime Directive could actually lead to. And that, you know, obviously Kirk, the original Star Trek, was always criticized about Kirk's always breaking the Prime Directive. But, you know, it was interesting. Maybe they'll deal with that. I think it'll be really interesting. I mean, we've got the Borg. The Romulans are dealing with the Borg, apparently. How do you deal with Romulus when it's destroyed or whatever? I mean, I don't know. And I think, I hope it's all dealt with in a very interesting fashion. I just hope Picard is smart. I hope it looks like it has a lot of, again, cliche, pulp, sci-fi elements. And I really hope that it's better than that. I hope so, but we'll see. Stubble McShave sent in a tip. I watched the first few episodes of Star Trek Discovery in the beginning, but gave up. I gave it a new go recently, but couldn't make it past one new episode, and I now have a big bruise in the forehead because of all the face palming. I don't know if you saw it. I tweeted this out, but somebody made a compilation video of all the scenes from Star Trek Discovery of the turbo lifts, their turbo lifts that are on this rail system, and apparently all of this empty space. It looks like the inside of Space Mountain or something like that, and compared and contrasted it with real Star Trek. And you watch this, and this is one of the things, it's not about me hating something. It's about me being the viceroy of verisimilitude going, there's even a great cut in this video where they show Burnham and I guess Tilly jogging in the ship. and they zoom in from the outside, and you realize whatever they're showing with these turbo elevators, wherever they're supposed to be, maybe they're going through a different dimension, because they couldn't possibly exist on Discovery. And the producers of the show, how they have allowed that nonsensicalness by, and they're like, ooh, that's cool. It's so irksome. It's so irksome because there's no effort to make that show believable, to have verisimilitude in any way, shape, or form. There just isn't. And it makes me so angry. Makes me so angry. Anyway, Fergal Kelly is here. Leaks suggest that Picard sets up the demise of the Federation and also links to Star Trek Discovery's third season. Can you sue? It's very similar to your idea. Well, look, I think, judging by the second season of Star Trek Discovery, is certainly the latter half of the second season of Star Trek Discovery. As we all know, David Mack, one of my favorite Star Trek novelists, wrote a Star Trek novel called Section 31, Control. And the latter half of Discovery Season 2 was all about Section 31 and a rogue or evil AI named Control, which was a lot less interesting than David Mack's book. So many people might not know, but back before Bad Robot took over Star Trek in 2006, 2005, 2006, when Bryan Singer was working on Superman Returns, we were up in Seattle. And Chris McQuarrie, who he grew up with, childhood friend of Bryan's, obviously he wrote Usual Suspects that Bryan directed. They've known each other forever. They collaborated on Valkyrie after this. So I was out to dinner with Chris McQuarrie and Bryan Singer, and I was saying, after Enterprise was over, we should all go in and pitch a new Star Trek series to Paramount or CBS. And this was we were having sushi, and to be fair, it was a very sake-soaked dinner. And at that dinner, I said, Chris, you write it, Bryan, you direct it, and I'll be the consulting producer. And that seemed like a great idea. And I had pitched them my idea, which was, I just said it in the year 3000 or 3001, around the 30th century. And we would pick up as the Federation was in decline, like many things that are around for a long time. Now, it wasn't a dystopian Federation. It's just people had moved on. The Vulcans and the Romulans had gone through Reformation, and the Bajorans had become more their prophets. The wormhole aliens, their prophets, had become one. The Cardassians were more, they were developing their society, and they'd become more artists. The Klingons had become more like serene warrior mystics, and they were different. And everyone sort of was pulling out of the Federation. The Federation had just changed, and the Federation didn't have the kind of funds anymore to build more starships, so a lot of their ships were old. It was just the Federation was in decline. And that was my idea. And we would show, and everybody we knew, the Bajorans, the Ferengi, who now had galactic domination, the Federation, everybody was just different and changed. And you would show what happens to an old Rome, before the Visigoths came. And there was some decadence, and there was it was going to be a different kind of a thing. And then what I did was I took it to Jeffrey Thorne, who has now written Star Trek novels, and he's a great television writer. And he was writing a comic book for my company at the time, and I brought this idea to him, and he sort of wrote up a pitch document, and then I added to that document, and we were going to submit this to CBS after Chris and Bryan looked at it, and our show was called Star Trek Federation. And the idea was, what does the Federation mean? How do we restore it to its former luster after it's become sort of old and set in its ways and it's in decline? Can you do something like that? And that document is out on the web. You can find it. There's been articles written about it. Various people have written stories about Star Trek shows that never got made, and Federation was one of those. I actually contacted Mike Akuda, and he made a logo for the show. He made a Star Trek Federation logo that was on the front of the pitch document that we had. And a lot of people, I was actually, believe it or not, I was told a couple of years ago that they were looking at our document. I was told that they were absolutely looking at our Federation document and that they had decided to use elements from our document. Who knows? Like, I can't sue them because this idea is not necessarily unique. Anybody who's thinking about ancient Rome or any empire or dynasty that's fallen, it's not a stretch. Although it is sort of interesting, what can I say? I don't know. It doesn't surprise me considering because I don't think a lot of the Discovery writing staff and the people working on Star Trek now, other than Kirsten Beyer and Michael Chabon, do they read science fiction? I don't know. But it is very similar to our idea. But I wouldn't sue. The only people who get rich when you sue someone are the lawyers. And, I can always, that document predates Star Trek Discovery by 9 years. So not at least Star Trek Discovery's third season. So it'll always be out there. So, I will leave it to others to say whether or not that's indeed, in fact, what happened. So we shall see. Now, I just want to remind everyone that our own Ian Samuels has his new Doctor Who column on our website at theburnettwork.net, and he's rapidly adding to his list of reviews. So I would encourage everyone, if you're a Doctor Who fan, to go to the burnettwork.net website and check it out. Also, if you want to send letters to the show, you know that you can always send them to the burnettwork.net, and I will read them, and as I'm going to do now. So, yes, and let's see who is in the house today. Who is in the house today? Let's see what great letters we have here. And I'm just going to start with Jason DeWolf. Actually, I read Jason DeWolf's letter yesterday, I think. But, hey, Rob and fellow connoisseurs, this is from Jason DeWolf. A few thoughts have come to my mind about the change of enjoyment and appreciation from a first viewing of a movie to its second and subsequent viewings. Mr. Tarantino in particular, and the pacing exceptions and payoff. I have just rewatched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood here at home on disc for the first time since seeing it at the theater. As you know, I did the same thing last weekend. And although I liked it upon my first viewing, I loved it on my second viewing. This has happened to us all, and for me, it seems to be whenever a movie's pace, trajectory, character arcs, and payoff are unusual, layered, delayed. And this movie is very much all of those things, which was too much to fully appreciate on first viewing, because it went against my expected biases and rhythm of viewership. I don't liken this to the overt attempt to subvert our expectations the way Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi or J.J. Abrams did with Star Trek, because that seems to be someone purposefully going against the grain. This is more the work of a person who sees the world from a truly different perspective, and it takes a bit of catch-up to their unique layout of what is being said and what and who relates to what. It's like a simple pop song versus an epic pop song. A simple song can hit you immediately, and you have an instantly gratifying effect but with little staying power, whereas a well-crafted and more layered and complicated song may take a few more listens before you realize how great it is. This movie is one of those songs to me, as it has so much nuance to it, and that it just gets better after you've got the initial lay of the land. I'm not saying everyone will or should feel this way about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, as it also is a matter of taste, but I'm sure this holds true for certain movies for everyone, and I love the unexpected effect of digging a movie that initially left you ambiguous because it went against your rhythm in a variety of ways. It could be Mulholland Drive, Blade Runner, Inception, or even Death Proof. Actually, that does not come. I've got two different names here. Jason DeWolf, and then it ends by saying it's from Jay Canada. Maybe Jay Canada is Jason DeWolf, but on the website it has both of their names. So whichever one of you wrote it, maybe you're the same person. I don't know, but I want to thank you. That's a great letter, and I have frequently found myself amongst those people. I'm going to tell you something. When I first saw Goodfellas, I was working at Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers would have employee screenings once a week in Screening Room 5, their big screening room there. And I loved going. And that's how I would see a lot of the time. I would see Warner Brothers movies. We'd see them sometimes before they opened. And when I first saw Goodfellas, I really liked it, but I didn't like it as much as I hoped I would. Only because by the way, I love Goodfellas. I love Goodfellas. I think Goodfellas is a timeless classic for the ages. It's brilliantly made. But I guess I didn't know what I expected from it. For those of you who might not remember this, Goodfellas was made under a different name. I think the book it was based on was actually called Wise Guys. But there was Stephen Cannell's Wise Guys show starring Ken Wall and Jonathan Banks, by the way, from Better Call Saul and of Breaking Bad. I love Jonathan Banks. I loved Wise Guys, or Wise Guy, the show. But so they changed the name of the movie to Goodfellas, which I thought I love the name Goodfellas. But when I first saw it, I didn't love it. And then when I finally got it on home video, I got the Laserdisc, and I was like, oh my God, this movie's great. And a movie I saw in the theater that I've talked about before, I absolutely despised, maybe because I was a little hungover. I think it was on either Christmas Day or New Year's Day, whatever the opening day was. The Talented Mr. Ripley. And I adore The English Patient. Anthony Minghella The English Patient, and the movie he followed it up with, I think he made, if memory serves, he made Talented Mr. Ripley before Cold Mountain. I think so. But I hated The Talented Mr. Ripley when I first saw it. I hated it. But because it was Anthony Minghella, I bought it when it came out. And by that time, DVDs were around. So I ended up buying the DVD of The Talented Mr. Ripley. And again, it's a movie I absolutely adore. The acting is impeccable. I mean, the cast, Jude Law is amazing in it. Philip Seymour Hoffman is amazing in it. Gwyneth Paltrow is amazing in it. Kate Blanchett is amazing in it. And, of course, Matt Damon as Tom Ripley. My God. I mean, the whole first half of that movie when they're in Italy, I just want to live that world. I want to live that life. And I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I didn't like it very much. What do I know? So I think it's absolutely true. There are times when you see movies that you didn't like at first. Oh, another movie I hated when I first saw it that I adore now was Boogie Nights. I know people think, what? But I don't know. When I first saw Boogie Nights, I just found it insufferable. Now, I also found Magnolia insufferable, and I haven't changed my mind on that. But I do. Boogie Nights and Goodfellas are two of the great movies of the 90s. So, yeah, I think you definitely have a point there. For sure. Great movies sometimes aren't necessarily readily apparent when you first see them. So I want to thank you for that letter. It's what a great letter. And yeah, this next letter is a little close to my heart. This letter comes from Paul Gilmore. Hello, Rob. I have come to a conclusion that has saddened my heart. Let me explain. I remember always being very excited when an anniversary edition to some of my favorite films would be released on home video. They would come jam-packed with new interviews, commentaries, behind the scenes, just packed full of goodies, including sometimes one of my personal favorites, an isolated score. I would spend hours upon hours watching these features. It was a true celebration of the film to the fans, and it was glorious. But now times have changed. Studios either can't or don't want to spend money to add these features anymore. Now, much like the Shutter Island anniversary or the Hunt for Red October anniversary, they're just releasing them on a 4K steelbook, which, as I said, saddens my heart. Is it because they deem it not just financially feasible? Do they think a majority of people don't care? As someone who's worked on special features, which are fantastically produced, by the way, well, thank you very much. Perhaps you would have some insight into as to why studios are making me a sad film lover. Thanks, Paul Gilmore? Well, Paul, a great question, and it makes me very, very sad. It really does. It makes me very, very sad to talk about this. I wonder if you can see on my wide angle. I'm not sure if you can. Well, so right above me, actually, I'll tilt this so you can see. Hang on. Well, you can't because I can't tilt this. I can't tilt this frame. I'm doing the wrong camera. Hang on. Can I do this one? Put it way up. So those are some of the special features, the discs that I've produced, and they go all around. And so there you go. I think I also just pulled out my hard drives in doing that, in showing you. But so I worked on special features. I mean, I made my living on special features for 15 years, pretty much, from 1999 through 2014. And interestingly enough, I can't talk about what exactly I'm working on, but I am doing special features. Actually, I'm doing 2 sets of special features now that I think about it. But I'm obviously a fan. And I think one of the great joys of the DVD format was special features. Now, a lot of people, Laserdiscs were always a niche thing. But special features really began in terms of home entertainment back in the 80s when Criterion started releasing Laserdiscs. And the first discs that Criterion was releasing, they released King Kong and Citizen Kane. And Laserdiscs, they were releasing CAV Laserdiscs, which were a half an hour per side. And the reason they were doing that is because CAV Laserdiscs, constant angular velocity, meant that you could have single frames, like there was basically a single frame per rotation of the Laserdisc. And that's why it was constant angular velocity. So you could actually you could step through text pages, and you could step through photographs, and then later they started making video packages, and then they were able to add audio commentaries because of the format. So Criterion started making special features for home entertainment way back in the 80s. And there were special features on certain discs. The other studios did. And then, of course, Disney, there were special features Laserdiscs all through the Laserdisc format's life. And sometimes you would get these big box sets from Disney, like the original Laserdisc of Tron came in. It was one of the collector's editions that came in a big, huge white box. And they had lots of special features that Michael Pellerin produced, who later went on to produce the Lord of the Rings discs and hired me to do a Tron documentary for DVD. And it was a part of that format. Laserdiscs already had aficionados dropping a premium price or spending money on a premium price product, so they knew that they were going to get their money back. But producing special features, this is, I think, something people don't understand. It's like any shoot. You have a crew, you've got cameras, you've got lights, you've got sound people. To do it right, it's expensive. You know, you're going out, just to give you an indication, if you're going out for, say, a full day of shooting and you hire a great DP and a great camera package, you could wind up spending $1,500 shooting a few interviews. So it's not cheap, you know. And then editorial, I mean, Lord of the Rings, I was part of a team, but we worked a year apiece on those Lord of the Rings special features on the extended versions of the movies. The audio commentaries alone took months because they're all edited. A lot of audio commentaries you just turn on and let the audio commentary run. But the audio commentaries on Lord of the Rings were curated, and we literally sat people down over the course of days and did commentaries, and then mixed and matched people, and then all of those were edited. If you know anything about editing on a computer non-linearly, whether it's in Premiere or whether it's in Avid or Final Cut or DaVinci, whatever program iMovie, the timelines that show the edits on the audio commentaries for Lord of the Rings were terrifying. It was terrifying to look at how much editorial work went into those commentaries, and people have to be paid. So the kinds of, and just to give you an indication, the special features alone. Now, again, they were priced. It was a premium price, But the special features alone on, say, the Two Towers, which was a much bigger budget than Fellowship of the Ring, you were looking at about $4 million just for the special features. Now, to be fair, at Curdy Pellerin that was producing those special features, we had a team of really great people, and all of those people contributed. So, after you're paying your payroll and everything for a year and paying everybody what they're worth, $4 million ends up not being a lot of money. But in terms of special features, the most amount of money probably. The Lord of the Rings discs probably, and maybe King Kong, what Michael did after, had the biggest budgets of any special features. But that's a production. $4 million is a lot of money. What they realized was, as great as special features were, as DVDs, which first started out as a first adapters and a connoisseur's format, it was adopted so quickly by the consumer base that what was unfortunate was they didn't realize they part of the reason they thought DVDs caught on was because of the special features. When really, as I found out, and I've told this story many times, when we were working on Superman Returns, Walmart, which sold 45 to 50% of all the physical media in the world, could dictate terms. And they told me I thought I was going to be doing a 3-disc full-blown special edition of Superman. That was going to be one disc would have the movie, and then there'd be 2 discs of extras. Walmart said no. Walmart wanted a vanilla movie-only disc, and then they wanted a double disc set with special features. So we had to curtail how much we were doing for the disc, and also, ultimately, the vanilla movie-only disc, for every 10 units it sold, the vanilla-only disc outsold the special feature disc, the 2-disc set, 8-2. And that was really disheartening. Now, I understand at Walmart, it doesn't exactly cater to upscale clientele that have expensive home theaters that are really interested in special features. But I found out that only 20% of the people even buying physical media cared about special features. And of those, how many actually watched the special features? And what happened as a result of that, the studios realized, people will buy these movies on disc, and we don't need to put special features on them. And special features are expensive to produce. I mean, I think there's no greater tragedy than Marvel now. Disney used to produce the best special features. If you go back and you look at those Laserdisc collector sets, or when I first started working in special features, I worked on The Emperor's New Groove, or Snow White, or Tron, and everybody else was working on the Toy Story box set, or the Fantasia. I worked on Fantasia too, actually. The Fantasia anthology. I mean, they were incredible. What Disney was doing was incredible. And as a comic book fan, and as somebody who loves the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it makes me really sad that we don't have giant full-blown special editions with half-hour segments on costumes or hour-long segments on visual effects and the story. And it bums me out. I mean, they're fine, but they're very perfunctory. And special features, they barely spend any money on them anymore because they're just not needed. And in the world of streaming, which really bothers me, I mean, what really is a bummer is when I think about how much material, there's like 10 hours of special features on each of the Lord of the Rings extended editions. We did hundreds of hours of interviews. And I've often thought, like, I've told the story of interviewing Christopher Lee when I interviewed him for Fellowship of the Ring. We talked for 5 hours, just me and Christopher Lee in a hotel room at the Dorchester Hotel in the UK. I flew over there. We set up a shoot. 5 hours we sat. There's probably 10 minutes of that interview on the Fellowship of the Ring disc. There's 5 hours of Christopher Lee regaling us with stories, including the story he told me about going to see Star Wars for the first time and calling up Peter Cushing afterwards. It was gold. The story was gold. And none of those, of course, the studios would have to have their lawyers vet all this stuff, but I often thought, I said, we should start a subscription service where all of this material, and look, I've got hundreds and hundreds of tapes of people I interviewed on X-Men, raw interview stuff. And I've often thought like the studios could set up a portal, a place you could have a subscription service, and now they even have like HBO Max. I mean, my Superman tapes, I shot over 1,000 hours of footage. I think I shot like 1,200 hours of footage on the making of Superman Returns. And the Superman Returns documentary, Requiem for Krypton, represents 3 hours of 1,200 or 1,300 or 1,400 hours of footage I shot. And I've often thought, wouldn't it be interesting if you could go back, and now that there's these streaming services and now everybody's looking for content, the studios have all of this content they could repurpose for their films. I don't understand. I mean, it was really cool to see Disney Plus drop more. There was more behind-the-scenes footage for Endgame on Disney Plus than there was on physical media, the 4K disc. And I hope to see a lot more of that happen because there's so much material out there. Great material. I mean, my God, the interviews we did with Christopher Lee's no longer here. And he talked about being an OSS officer in British intelligence during World War II. I mean, it was amazing. Stuff I could never use, stuff that wasn't relevant. And boy, it sure would be fun to be able to use that stuff. And I'm with you 100%. It bums me out that special features have sort of gone by the wayside because, the art of filmmaking. But again, and what's happened is there's a lot of fans that have taken up the mantle. There are people that have done documentaries like Paul's documentary on American Werewolf in London. There's Psycho documentary, the Nightmare on Elm Street documentary, Friday the 13th. They're doing unauthorized documentaries on people who are doing them on their own time. And what's unfortunate about that is, again, here's the thing. When the studios don't have unlimited amounts of money, believe it or not. They borrow money from banks to make movies, and their operating costs on a yearly basis, people have to have, we were paid, all of the DVD producers were paid out of the marketing budgets of the studios. So they were carving out, and they were considered this. When I worked on Chronicles of Narnia, my company, Ludovico Technique, was hired not just to make the DVD special features, but we also ran all of the EPK shooting, which is electronic press kit shooting, and which was great for me because I always thought combining the two, and a lot of people have done that since, but back in 2004, combining those things, and I worked directly with the unit publicist on the film, Ernie Malick, so I was working directly with him, and then Sam Hurwitz's company back in the States got our EPK tapes, and we were doing our behind-the-scenes footage. EPK stands for electronic press kit, and it was a great way to do it, but unfortunately, there's just not a lot of call anymore for special features, and as physical media goes away, less and less call for it. Like, why do it? I think from a historical perspective, it should be preserved. But, then it got to be there are lawyers involved. People have approvals. It's really a pain in the ass. And for us who love special features, I mean, for me, it's historical. It's historical perspective. I think that's invaluable to have. And it's unfortunate that all of that is not going to be what it used to be. And it bums me out. It really does. And I wish that weren't the case, but unfortunately, it is, which is a bummer. Suthius sent in a super chat and said, "Hey, Mr. B, just finished Lost in Space Season 2, enjoyed it." I enjoyed the second season of Lost in Space, but I felt that I love the first half of the season. But once they got back up into space, I really thought that the writing suffered. They introduced all of these very intriguing things, and I don't want to get into it. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, and didn't examine any of them. It was just like, it seemed like, okay, we don't quite know what to do, so we're just going to throw one crisis after another, and we're going to have the human characters act in ways that would go against their own interests, or they would just seem too evil for evil's sake, especially considering the kind of things that the Robinson family was able to escape from. It did sort of bum me out. I did expect more out of the writing of the latter half of the season, and I didn't get that, and I was sort of I was very disappointed by it. But I'm sure that they'll come back strong. At least I hope they do. But I really love that cast, and they just got better in the second season. Parker Posey's character really grated on me after a while. It just got to the point where I'm like, oh, come on. Come on. Why are you being this way? Why are you causing, you know the Robinsons are right. So why do you have to be such a monumental pain in the ass? That was kind of a bummer. But I did overall, look, I enjoyed, I think the production values and the characters are great, and I do love them. So yeah, Lost in Space Season 2, I definitely would recommend it. I think it's great, and I liked it. I'm glad you liked it. Alan Bainham, who lives in the UK, wrote in, Rob, we live in a great time for science fiction, comic book movies, and horror with Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, and soon HBO Max. But I live in the UK, where we don't get HBO Max, so we missed a lot of great content from America. How do you think people who don't live in North America will be able to watch all of these great things? So far, I haven't watched The Mandalorian, but I know so much about the show already because of the internet. Sometimes there's just too much TV to watch. How do we pick what we watch? The Expanse is brilliant, a very underrated show. It's on Amazon Prime in the UK, so not many people have watched it. Doom Patrol, I don't even think is on in the UK. All things coming onto HBO Max won't be in the UK. So what do you think big corporations should do about other countries that aren't in North America? The world is a very big place and a very small place at the same time. But the problem I'm experiencing probably happens to you. You probably can't watch all the great shows in the UK and America either. Shows like Doctor Who. I don't know how long you have to wait to see them. Well, Doctor Who's getting here pretty quickly, but I couldn't see Bodyguard, the 6-episode Bodyguard. I was reading all about that, and it took a while for that to drop on Netflix, which I really loved. Thank you for all the insight into all things sweaty and geeky. I always listen to you when I'm going to work. Thank you for a great internet community where people can be themselves and talk about all things weird. Adam Bainham. Well, Adam, first of all, thank you very much. I think this is a problem. We very rapidly, I think far quicker than anybody might have anticipated, we became a global village. And I remember, I've told this story before, but when I went to Israel in 2005, I was invited to Israel with Roger Nygard, who directed Trekkies. So Roger Nygard and I went to Israel to the Icons Festival in Tel Aviv, and I showed Free Enterprise. By the way, Tel Aviv was awesome. I love Israel. I highly recommend anybody going. And we went, of course, we did see the old city of Jerusalem. It was amazing. I loved all the people there. I thought Israel was terrific. And Tel Aviv is a very cosmopolitan city, many different languages spoken there. It was terrific. But one of the things everybody would come up to me and ask, because I was there for a science fiction festival, everybody was so nice, but they were all so apologetic, and they talked about how much they downloaded illegally off the internet because it wasn't available in Israel. And I said, look, man, if somebody is not making something available to your country, then by any means necessary is pretty much how I think about it. And I am no advocate of piracy. Piracy has really killed the low-budget horror movie. It's very hard to raise money for low-budget horror at a certain level. I mean, I'm talking about the level like $300,000 and under, $400,000, $1 million and under. Because horror, if it's any good, gets pirated so quickly. And even the late, great John Schnepp was so disappointed when he finally put his movie out, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened? It showed up on the Pirate Bay, and his fans, our fans, you imagination connoisseurs, I'm not saying you in particular, not everybody watching this broadcast certainly, but John was very disappointed how many people stole his movie. He had to pay for his movie. He had investors and people gave him money. And when he would see that movie had literally millions of downloads illegally, he saw that as money coming out of his pocket, that money he had to make to give back to his investors. And I know we live in a world where now that everything's been turned into a file, it's difficult to put a value to it. But remember, every movie you watch is owned by somebody else, and everyone thinks, oh, the studios have all the money in the world. No, one, they don't. And two, the only way that they can make money is by selling their product, just like anything else. You don't go to the grocery store, look at something you might want to buy and go, you know what? I'm just going to download that for free later. Because you can't. If you want a bottle of jam, or you want some feminine protection products, or toilet paper, or detergent, or fruit, you can't go and download that stuff illegally off the internet. So why is it okay to download video games, music, movies, any kind of content that you should be paying for? How is it okay to download for free? That said, I find it crazy that Disney Plus launched with a Star Wars show and didn't make it available to at least, I mean, maybe not so much in China, because although Disney's huge in China, but the idea that you can't get The Mandalorian in the UK is, I mean, the UK is a big Star Wars country. Why wouldn't they launch there? Now, there are other considerations. There's international laws. There's countries want to protect their sovereign rights. So there's a lot of issues when you take streaming services into foreign countries. And also, there are previously existing deals with certain, like when you sell a movie, if you have a movie, an independent movie that you've made, and it's not picked up by Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or something like that, you sell it on a territory-by-territory basis, where you literally go and you sell it just to the UK. So some company in the UK, they buy your movie and they distribute it in the UK, whether it's like something like Metronome, I think, is a company out of the UK, or Emotion, or that's a Japanese company. Same thing. You sell it to Germany, you sell it to France, you sell it to Italy, you sell it to Latin America. You know, and all of those people that buy it from you expect to make a profit by what you're selling. So that's another thing why piracy is bad for the industry, because if people can download things for free, they won't pay for them when a foreign distributor has put up the money and helped an independent filmmaker by buying the rights to show their film. So think about it. Next time you illegally download a movie, or illegally watch a film or a TV show, or download a song, remember what you are doing. You're helping contribute to making it much harder to get the next song made, or the next movie made, or the next TV show made. Because if everybody who illegally downloads kicked in some cash, more creators would have more money to make things. And that's just the reality. I mean, John Schnepp, I can't tell you, he was so bummed that he knew that our own community, because the people that, look, we sweaties, as John would say, we imagination connoisseurs, we're at the forefront. We're early adopters. We're tech gurus. And so, of course, if there's something we can't see, we're like, I got to get the Harmy's despecialized, the latest version of the 1977 Star Wars and download it. Yes, I did do that, and I might have burned Blu-rays of them as well. If you're not going to make the original 1977 Star Wars available, then you got to do what you got to do. Again, I think that's just silly. Why would you not do that? I understand where George Lucas is coming from, but why wouldn't he let Disney do it? Anyway, I think it's unfortunate that many fans around the world do not get streaming services. I really do. I think that they deserve them. People need them. And, it's important. It's important. But it bums me out. I think everybody should be able to get them. But I think, look, again, we're going through a period of rapid change, craziness happening in the world, especially when it comes to this. And, of course, you have countries like France who want to preserve their cultural heritage. So they don't want a deluge of whatever garbage America is shoveling their way. And I'm sure a lot of other countries don't either. You know, there's a really interesting show that Meyer Burnett produced called Messiah that just dropped on Netflix. And it was shot in Jordan. And now there's people are up in arms in Jordan about the show, wondering if it's sacrilegious, wondering if it portrays Muhammad in an unfair light. It does not. And it's really interesting. Basically, Messiah is about a man who may or may not be a modern-day Messiah. And while I've only watched a little bit of it, it's pretty compelling. And it's obviously well-made, very interesting. Gilbert is here, or Gilbert is going away. He's hearing Tallulah bark. He was sleeping underneath my feet. He just got up and left, as he is wont to do. Maybe he'll come back with Tallulah, and they'll get cookies so you can see them. But yes, thank you for this letter, Adam. I hope one day that everybody gets to see whatever they want, whenever they want. It is it is kind of a bummer. Now there are new features on the Burnettwork.net website. One of the things that we're going to be doing, Stephen Goggin is a big. Oh wait, this is interesting. Mike, there's things on the page that are. Oh no, I guess not. Okay, anyway, let me read this letter. Hey Rob, you're talking about Stanley Kubrick being your favorite director made me think about who my own favorite director was, and it's not something I've thought about much. Off the top of my head, I would say Spielberg, but that almost seems to be cheating, a very token answer. So I wanted to think outside the box a bit, and it hit me like a freight train. John Carpenter. I've always felt he was the Spielberg of genre film, as his filmography is similarly eclectic, and I can say with a lot of confidence that in the late 70s and 80s, he had one of the greatest, most prolific decades that I would put up against anyone else. From 1978 to 88, he directed two of the greatest masterpieces of the horror genre, Halloween and The Thing. Those two movies alone would be career-defining for anyone. But wait, there's more. The Fog, Escape from New York, Christine, Starman, Big Trouble in Little China, They Live, and his most underrated, Prince of Darkness. You and I park your shuttlecrafts and our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay, Stephen. Man, do I love Prince of Darkness. I love it with all of my heart. Obviously, the second movie in John Carpenter's unofficial Apocalypse trilogy, which began with The Thing, continued with Prince of Darkness, and ended with In the Mouth of Madness. Sure, his output post-1990 wasn't the greatest, save for In the Mouth of Madness, but I'll forgive him. Unless we forget that he composed the scores and soundtracks to these movies, Carpenter's scores are almost a genre of music. I guess the point of my letter, other than to praise John Carpenter, is to get your opinion on his filmography. Well, I'll tell you. That's from Stephen G. I am a huge John Carpenter fan, a massive John Carpenter fan. The very first two pre-recorded VHS videotapes I owned were Halloween and Dark Star. Halloween was on Meta Home Entertainment before it became Media, and Dark Star, still to this day on Blu-ray, is on VCI Home Entertainment. How many does VCI live off Dark Star? I don't know, but it's still out there. I'm a huge John Carpenter fan, and I love his use. He shoots in Panavision 2.35:1. I just love John Carpenter. I was on the set of Memoirs of an Invisible Man when I worked at Warner Brothers. Stage 16, they built like the first stories of the half-disappeared building, which was amazing, seeing that as a practical effect. I really do love John Carpenter, and I think, like you pointed out, he's very prolific. He was mostly a low-budget filmmaker, but I think there is a sadness to John Carpenter. And if you talk to him, it's very apparent. I've interviewed him once. It's very apparent when you talk with him that he started out early in his career. His first feature after Dark Star, which started out as a student film, was, of course, Assault on Precinct 13, which is sort of a riff on Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo, if you haven't seen Assault on Precinct 13. And that was really the first instance where the John Carpenter sound came up. You know, that theme. I love that. I love that. It's great. I love Assault on Precinct 13. But then, of course, he followed that up with Halloween, which he followed up Halloween with The Fog, and then, of course, Escape from New York. I mean, he was very, very successful putting out The Fog and Escape from New York, Avco Embassy Pictures, and then he jumped over. He got his first big budget movie, which was The Thing, and that's where his career, The Thing, is recognized now as a horror masterpiece, but it came out weeks after E.T. and at the same time as Blade Runner. And when you have a summer of Poltergeist, I actually wrote about this in a book I contributed to, which you can go get on Amazon, called The Cyberpunk Nexus, Exploring the Blade Runner Universe. It's a terrific book if you like Blade Runner. I contribute an essay to that collection about Blade Runner and the box office of the summer of 1982. And unfortunately, when The Thing came out, its dour, cold tale of men stuck in the Arctic surviving the alien onslaught of The Thing, did not do well at the box office. All of the innovative physical effects that Rob Bottin had accomplished and his makeup team, some incredible, even to this day, you look at that stuff going, oh my God, it has lost none of its power. And even then, Ennio Morricone came on and scored that movie. It's top drawer all the way. It's beautifully photographed. Albert Whitlock matte paintings. I mean, my God, does The Thing hold up. It's so amazing. But it didn't do well. And it really, as far as John Carpenter was concerned, I think the financial failure, he was on a high. You know, he went from his student film gets turned into a feature and gets released. Then he makes Assault on Precinct 13, where he first starts experimenting and playing with widescreen imagery with Panavision lenses. He goes and then does Halloween, which becomes a monster hit, one of the most successful independent movies ever made. Follows it up with The Fog, not as much of a hit, but still a hit. And then, of course, the beloved Escape from New York in 1981, where he introduces Snake Plissken. And then, you know, The Thing comes out, and ever since The Thing came out, you know, next he changed it up. He did a Stephen King adaptation. He did the Christine in 83. And then, of course, he did Starman, again, a movie which underperformed at the box office. That's an amazing movie. I mean, I would dare say Starman is easily one of Carpenter's best, if not his best movie. Not necessarily my favorite. And then what does he do? The wuxia genre. I mean, Carpenter makes Big Trouble in Little China. And it was a movie that was coming out, 20th Century Fox in 86 was promoting 3 genre films together. The Fly, Aliens, and Big Trouble in Little China. And Big Trouble in Little China turned out to be a disappointment because no one had seen these martial arts movies from China. You know, no one knew that genre. You know, no one had seen Wu Warriors of the Magic Mountain? Or Zoo, it's Zoo, Warriors of the Magic Mountain. I'm sure Willow's like, dude, you got to learn your Chinese pronunciation. But yeah, so I'm a huge fan of John Carpenter. I love Prince of Darkness. Of course, he pulled, in a way, he did what M. Night Shyamalan did by going to work for Blumhouse. After Big Trouble in Little China, John Carpenter was smart. He forged an alliance with Alive, who had a distribution deal through Universal, and he ended up making Prince of Darkness, and then They Live as part of a 3-picture deal. I think Alive went belly up, and we never got a third film under that deal. But, you know, Carpenter returned to his low-budget roots. Prince of Darkness is one of my favorite movies. It's also got one of the great John Carpenter scores. And then, of course, a movie, They Live, that everybody loves, that has gotten more topical as the days go by. But yes, and everyone loves, of course, he combined his love of wrestling with science fiction and horror, and Rowdy Roddy Piper. I mean, They Live is a hoot. By the way, Escape from New York, The Fog, They Live, and Prince of Darkness were all released on 4K last year by Studio Canal, the same people that are even now doing Basic Instinct in 4K. So good on them. But yes, I am a huge fan of John Carpenter, and I love his movies. And yes, I did not like Village of the Damned. I loved In the Mouth of Madness. I saw it opening night at the Chinese Theater. I thought it was so good. It's so much fun. Do you read Sutter Kane? Another great Carpenter score. And it's nice to see Carpenter now. He's reached his 70s, and he's touring on the road with his son, and they're making music. He put out his 2 albums, Lost Themes and Lost Themes 2. John Carpenter music from movies that never existed, which is like, that's the greatest thing ever. He scored the last Halloween movie, and he's doing, I think, Halloween Kills now as well, producing them. So who doesn't love John Carpenter? I could wax rhapsodic about John Carpenter all day long, but I'm afraid work must intrude, and my associate Theo here has some questions he would like to ask you. Sort of fill in the blanks type questions. That's a little Die Hard reference for you. Yes. Stubble McShave says, the Star Wars and Lord of the Rings special features were very educational about movie production for a layman such as me. Also, I remember Christopher Lee hinting about how he killed Nazis with knives when he was in the SOE during World War II, but I think that was in the Return of the King feature. Yeah, he might have talked about that. We talked about that at length because he tells, well, I'll leave it up to you guys. He told great stories about that, how he knows what it sounds like when someone is stabbed. But yeah, they probably put it in the Return of the King features because it never made it into the Fellowship features. Mark C says, part of the 20% I bought the steel case set of Superman to get the special features and video journal discs. Me too. For Mark C is talking about when I worked on Superman Returns, we tried to make them bi-weekly, but we were doing bi-weekly video blogs with Bryan Singer. And that really had never been done before. And we were doing concurrently with Peter Jackson, who was doing them for King Kong. Oh, the dogs have shown up. And I know people like it. People were afraid that when I moved into the Robservatory, the dogs wouldn't be here. Does somebody want to get up on my knee? You want to get up on my knee? You want to have a thing? Gilbert, you want to get up? There you go, buddy. Oh, I got both of you. I got both Tallulah and Gilbert for some cookie time. Cookie time, cookie time. It's time for some cookies. You guys are the greatest, huh? People thought you wouldn't be on the show. No, that's 2. You get 2 cookies. Come on, you've had some cookies already. You know you're not supposed to have more than 2 cookies, huh? Yeah, green kiss, baby. All right, you get down. You get down now. Okay, well, you can't. It's hard to talk and do the show if you're gonna sit on my lap and lick me, Tallulah. It is tough. It is a little tough, and that's my water glass. So you got to get down. How about that? Would you please get down? Come on, Tallulah. Yes. Here you go. You get down, baby. Yes, you get down. You get down. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go. There's the canine corner. Rob's canine corner. What can I call that? But anyway, so what Mark C is saying is that we did these bi-weekly blogs, and as a matter of fact, I'll tell you something funny. If you remember this, I think you can go see them still online. But the blogs were included. It was called Brian's Journals, and I was shooting all of that footage. And believe it or not, my compatriot, who we shared offices, they were right next to each other in cubicles, Adam Robitel, who's done quite well for himself. He directed The Taking of Deborah Logan, Insidious 4, Escape Room, and he's currently in South Africa shooting Escape Room 2. But he and I were doing those blogs together over the oversight of John Limpert from Warner Brothers. And I was shooting all this behind the scenes, and we were repurposing some of my footage for these bi-weekly blogs. And one of the coolest things that we did was we coordinated with Peter Jackson when they were shooting King Kong and did this goof where, by the way, people thought this was real. So we did this thing where Peter Jackson called up Brian on the phone. And of course, my old DVD team on Lord of the Rings was covering King Kong. So we were able to coordinate this. So Peter Jackson gets a call from Brian gets a call from Peter Jackson, and Peter Jackson says, "Look, I'm too tired." And Brian literally did this. Flew over to New Zealand and met with Peter, and then directed a scene from King Kong, and we shot both sides of this, and we released these blogs at exactly the same time. We didn't even get studio approval. We just did it. It was awesome. And people, like Brian's agents, called him up and said, wait, how much are you getting paid to direct King Kong? It was a goof. It didn't really happen. But those blogs, which were called Brian's Journals, there's actually a really good one about going to the San Diego Comic-Con, are still available. But as Mark says, the only way you could get them on physical media was in the box set, the Superman box set that it's around here somewhere, because I have it. Because I have all my work, but it is here. So they released a box set that had those discs in it, which is pretty great. Mark C also says, have you seen Schnepp's blocking video that replaces his film uploaded to YouTube? It's a crazy, bizarre video that I would not recommend on acid. Yes. Schnepp, when he would find, he made it for people, like he did this crazy video to block others from showing his movie. And it's pretty funny. And that was John Schnepp. I mean, for people that were trying to steal his movie, you got to love John Schnepp for doing that kind of thing. God love that guy. I miss John Schnepp every single day. Indeed, I do. Because he was great. He really was great. By the way, If you want to see more or send in letters about your favorite directors, or if you want to send any letters to me, do so at the Burnettwork.net website. So check that out, the Burnettwork.net. You can also send me videos there. We have a Dropbox. There's a link, and they will get to me, just like Stubble McShaves did. And as I said, I'm going to be compiling whatever videos people send to me. You have to, I would assume, by the way, If you want me to show videos on the show, please indicate that. Even if maybe you just want me to see the video, but if you send me videos, I'm just going to assume you want me to play them on the show. And I encourage everybody to send videos or things because it's so great. We're trying to build our community, and what better way than to see all of your beautiful faces. Dear Rob, scion of sci-fi, I wanted to follow up on Dean Mikitich's comments regarding the recasting of genre characters. I'm sure there are, by the way, this comes from our man Roberto Suarez in Portland, Oregon. I'm sure there are multiple reasons why characters like Indiana Jones and Han Solo are hard to recast. I think that part of the issue has to do with the settings in which these characters exist. Both Indy and Solo are very much tied to their settings. We expect Indy to exist in the late 1930s or 40s around the period of World War II. We've associated the character of Indy as portrayed by Harrison Ford in that period, and those elements mesh so well together that it is difficult to bring a new face into an already familiar setting for the audience. Similarly, Han Solo exists in a somewhat timeless fantasy futuristic reality that permeates the identity of our character. The Star Wars universe is fairly consistent. It looks and feels the same whether you're watching the sequel-era films or playing the Knights of the Old Republic video games set 1,000 years before the original trilogy. We've become accustomed to Ford in these settings and roles, so changing him within his fully realized universe feels jarring. The one exception would be Obi-Wan Kenobi. However, as Dean pointed out, it is much easier to accept a new actor in a role when they are playing the character at a considerably different age. Totally agree. In cases when the setting of the stories is more fluid, it is easier to accept new actors stepping into familiar roles. In fact, as fans, we've grown to anticipate and expect such recastings in these circumstances. Take, for instance, the character of Doctor Who and James Bond. Doctor Who is a show whose setting changes with the times. It roughly reflects the same time period when the show is produced. We are therefore willing to accept the need to recast the character every so often as times change. As the attitudes and values of the audiences evolve, so do the settings, the themes, and the characters. So much so that we look forward to the eventual recasting of the character, a new regeneration for a new generation. Bond is another character that keeps up with the times. Connery was very much a man of his era, attuned to the gender roles and norms of the Cold War era, but as times change and the threats of the past no longer relate to the threats of the present, we are willing to accept a new actor in a role that better reflects the current times. You can even see this play out in the Bond movies themselves, when both Connery and Moore had clearly overstayed their welcomes, arguably their worst films were their final ones, respectively, Diamonds Are Forever and A View to a Kill. Not counting Never Say Never Again, since it's not part of the official canon and is technically a Thunderball remake. I just wanted to share my thoughts on that and would love to hear what you and the other fellow Post-Geek Singularity members think. Thanks, as always, for your time. Well, Roberto Suarez, thank you for a thoughtful letter. What a great letter that is. You know, I think you really make some good points. I think and obviously before, I think Tarzan was most Johnny Weissmuller, but there were other actors that played Tarzan. You know, Hollywood's always going to recycle things. It's always easier to come up with something that already has some kind of name value than something that becomes something that's original. But by the way, I think all of the greatest successes, well, most, you know what, that's not even true, because when I think about it, I mean, Christopher Nolan's Batman movies were way more successful than Tim Burton's Batman movies were, or Joel Schumacher's for that matter. And I think what happens is, you know, in the case of Han Solo, I think time has a lot to do with it. When Star Wars can exist for such a long period of time, and new generations, I mean, Star Wars is essentially timeless. What's really interesting to me is I think Star Wars was timeless till George Lucas went and used CGI effects, because there was something about the CGI effects in 1997. Now you're looking at them with 22 years distance, even though they've upgraded them. It destroyed the verisimilitude of the movie. Whereas the original Star Wars was timeless. It really was timeless. But when you're watching Harrison Ford, when kids are growing up watching Han Solo for 42 years, it's really difficult when someone's been around that long. I mean, remember, Sean Connery only played James Bond from 1962 to 1971. That was only a 9-year period of time. And in there, we got George Lazenby in one of those movies as well, in 1969's On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So within that 9 years, that's not a lot of time. We did get somebody taking over the role, and then Connery, obviously, maybe being a little long in the tooth when Roger Moore took it over, it seemed right. And then they went from 1973 with Live and Let Die all the way through 1985's View to a Kill. Now we have Pierce. Then we had Timothy Dalton for 2, and then Pierce Brosnan, who went from 95 to 2003, I think, Die Another Day, and of course. Daniel Craig has been James Bond from 2006 to 2020. So I think you're right, but I think it's all about time. Like Harrison Ford was, think about it, he was Han Solo from 1977 up through, all the way through. There was no other Han Solo up through 2015. That's a lot of generations of people. So I think it's really difficult, as we saw with Alden Ehrenreich, who I thought did a fine, respectable job. When you've seen Harrison Ford play Han Solo for that long, I think it's almost too long to replace them. That's why I thought Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, it's the same thing. We watch those characters grow old and literally die. And so when you go back and you try and recast them, it's like they're not those characters. And the funny thing about Star Trek is Star Trek always moved forward, and they had a mythology, and it was a little loosey-goosey, but, Mark Leonard comes back from Journey to Babel in the second season of Star Trek and played Sarek again in 1984. You first saw Sarek for the very first time in the 67-68 Star Trek season, playing Spock's father, and then he shows up in 1984 in Star Trek 3. Now, that's some serious continuity, and that's what Star Trek... That was what it was, part of that. And once you see that, when you try and recast those things, it becomes a little weird. So I think you really have to be careful. There's franchises, obviously Doctor Who, because the Doctor regenerates, and there's a perfect example. It was a beautiful way to incorporate canonically a reason why you change actors. I mean, that was genius, and it worked so very well, and you got to love that. So kudos to them. But I think it really does have to do with time and how long an actor plays a role. Like, we're accustomed to Batman changing, and I think that's great for the franchise. Nobody's like, Christian Bale decided not to be. People bitched about Ben Affleck until they saw him in the suit. Ben Affleck was a great Batman. I wish he went on and had more. I wish the Ben Affleck Batman had a few solo movies under his belt. I really do. But now we're getting Robert Pattinson as Batman, and once people get over the initial shock of the guy from Twilight, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard considering how much he's done since then, but everybody's open to that. I don't know if anybody would be open to anyone else playing Indiana Jones, quite frankly. You're looking at a character that was introduced in 1981, and again, Harrison Ford has been Indiana Jones now for almost 40 years. I mean, yeah, you can say, well, there was the kid Indiana Jones, there's a Sean Patrick Flannery Indiana Jones, there's a River Phoenix Indiana Jones, but there's no adult Indiana Jones except Harrison Ford. So it's interesting. It's all about perception. I don't know. I mean, maybe in the future, as we move forward, imagination connoisseurs that come behind the new generation of imagination connoisseurs, members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, will find it easier to accept people in those lead roles. I mean, we'll see. We'll find out. We will find out. John Evanoff just sent in a super chat. John, I want to thank you for supporting the channel that way. That was very nice of you to do that. Somehow I've lost my ability to I don't know why, but I can't find my mouse. Let's go to my see, I have backups. I have backups upon backups. I have my little wireless touchpad right here, which is always good when my old school mouse, which I like. I don't know why I can't give up my old school mouse. I've got this great touchpad. Mark C. says, it was just announced on Twitter, Elizabeth Wurtzel, the author of Prozac Nation, has passed away. Really? Wow. She was not very old, was she? Let's look into that. I actually read Prozac Nation, to be honest with you. Wow, let's see. What a bummer. Let's see if the news is broken. She was 52. Oh my God. See, she looked great too. Yeah, this broke. It was in the New York Times. It happened. Wow. See, as I tell everybody, I'm an old man with one foot in the grave. She was kind of she was dishy. Elizabeth Wurtzel, author of the controversial 1994 memoir Prozac Nation, has died at age 52. Her husband, Jim Freed, confirmed to CNN. Oh, she lost her battle with breast cancer at a hospital in Manhattan Tuesday morning. That is a very sad thing. I always hate hearing about a good friend of mine, Susan Hauser, underwent chemotherapy recently and beat back breast cancer. A lot of people have asked me, why do I have a pink Darth Vader bust? That pink Darth Vader bust, I don't know who made it. I don't know if it was a sideshow thing. It was sold to raise awareness and I guess raise money for breast cancer research. My mom actually, over a course of 3.5 years, had two, I'm not telling tales out of school, she would tell you this too, had 2 radical mastectomies over 3 years. So breast cancer is definitely something that has obviously touched my family and touched so many. And I'm sorry to hear that a talented lady has lost her battle with breast cancer at such a young age. That's very sad. See, it's harder to utilize this. I like my mouse. So, this next letter comes from Ian Samuels. I know. Everyone's like, man, Ian Samuels, like what? You gonna throw a parade for him next? Yes, everybody should go watch or read Ian Samuels' Doctor Who columns on the Burnettwork.net website, but Ian does write other things, always interesting to read. He wrote this out. Rob, many today still know the name H.G. Wells. Many even know that he pretty much single-handedly invented the sci-fi genre, but the same cannot be said of the horror genre. How many know the name of Horace Walpole and the novel The Castle of Otranto? The first to be published under the genre horror back in 1764. I did not know this. H.G. Wells did start the sci-fi genre, but his works were not even classified under that genre. Instead, were referred to as scientific romances. But horror does survive the test of time, and no more so than vampires, and in particular Dracula. So what is it about the blood-sucking fiends that has stayed with us? Perhaps it is a genetic memory, a genetic fear. Pretty much every civilization that has ever graced this spheroid, plate spheroid on which we live, has had legends of such blood-sucking fiends. So with many civilizations in so many parts of the world having similar stories, is it a leap of the imagination or simple logic that such creatures long ago actually existed? Perhaps they were yet another human variant that lost out to the dominance of Homo sapiens and were lost except for those legends. Homo vampirus. What if they were indeed undying? Could that mean some are still with us? Let us raise a glass of red to Homo vampirus and just consider that there could be one near you today. Well, Ian, I like to believe that there are vampires. I have not watched V-Wars yet on Netflix, but I'm a huge Jonathan Mayberry fan, so maybe, perhaps, indeed, that there are vampires out in the world. Who knows? Who knows? But I want to thank you for that letter. That's interesting. I didn't know that about that book. What's that book about? But, I would say, okay, horror as a defined genre. But, the story of, like, the Minotaur. And that scared me. The Minotaur scared me. I didn't want to fight that dude. But, you just never know. You never know what's up. I mean, it's that's scary, scary stuff. But it's interesting that's the first horror novel, or that was the first horror novel, or defined as horror. I find that to be quite interesting. So yeah. Mark C sent in yet another super chat. Per comments about Zimmer scoring Bond, Michael Giacchino scored Rogue One in 4 weeks by himself. Okay, in case you haven't heard the news, the hired composer for No Time to Die was let go. And it was a composer that the director had teamed up with on Beasts of No Nation and also the Maniac TV series that he did for Netflix. And that composer was let go, and Hans Zimmer was hired. The problem is, and Mark is right, as I pointed out on the John Campea show, Jerry Goldsmith was still scoring Star Trek The Motion Picture with a full orchestra 10 days before the movie was released. That is some crazy talk, ladies and gentlemen. That is a nightmarish scenario. So Hans Zimmer has been replaced. He's replaced the previous composer, and he is now the composer of record for No Time to Die, the 25th James Bond movie, which everyone knows I'm very excited about that. And what really excites me, when I talked about this on Twitter, people are like, "What do you think that? You don't like Hans Zimmer?" I'm like, "No, I like Hans Zimmer. It's yet another in a litany of production difficulties that have befallen the production of No Time to Die. I think it's all going to be fine." And one of the things I've always enjoyed about different composers on the Bond franchise is when they rescore the opening gun barrel. The gun barrel that goes and I look forward to composers because like Bill Conti's was more big and brassy, Eric Serra's was a little synthy and weird and French. Everybody does a little bit different take. David Arnold's harked back to John Barry's, so I'm curious to hear what Hans Zimmer is going to do with the gun barrel opening, and I think he'll do a great job. I mean, I think it'll probably be wonderful, like in Exorcist 3. So I look forward to seeing what that is all going to be about. So that's exciting. So yeah, what's not to be excited about when it comes to the new James Bond movie? I think it's going to be great. I really do. I honestly believe that it is going to be great. So, I mean, what do you guys think? I don't know, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing No Time to Die, as anybody who has come to this channel for any length of time knows. Very excited about it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind people of all shapes, sizes, any persuasion, I would bring this. Oh, see, every time I say that, somebody sends me in a super chat. Claude, I want to thank you for that. John Barry, the Ipcris Files. Yes, okay, first of all, look. I love John Barry. I've always loved John Barry. John Barry scored Star Crash. How do they work that? I don't know. But it was great to get that. But yes, John Barry is one of my favorite composers. He, of course, to me, the way Sean Connery is sort of indelibly branded with the Bond franchise, so is John Barry. That's not to say, I mean, I was just watching Cotton Club Encore, and John Barry did an incredible jazzy score for that. John Barry wrote an incredible score for Body Heat. Of course, people know his scores from Dances with Wolves and Out of Africa. I mean, John Barry is an incredible, incredible composer. And yes, the Ipcris Files is a good score. I don't know it off the top of my head. Many of my friends, such as Dan Schweiger or Jeff Bond or Lucas Kendall, would know more about that than me. But still, it's great. I was sorry that he never got to score another James Bond movie. John Barry's last Bond score was, of course, the first appearance of Timothy Dalton in The Living Daylights, in 1987's Living Daylights. He was replaced by Michael Kamen, who I don't think necessarily was the right man for the job for 1989's License to Kill. And then we had no Bond for 6 years. And then Eric Serra showed us GoldenEye, and of course, many people brought up the fact that there was a piece of music, the tank chase in GoldenEye, which was not scored by Eric Serra, but I liked Eric Serra's music. If you were a fan of Luc Besson's movies such as La Femme Nikita or Leon the Professional, Eric Serra scored those. So I liked Eric Serra's score for GoldenEye. I know it was just different. But look, his gun barrel is pretty cool. I mean, a very different gun barrel sound. I mean, the music over the gun barrel, very different, but still, I really enjoyed it a great deal. So, yeah, we'll see. I'm still talking about Bond. But Claude, I want to thank you for sending that in. So what I was going to say, I'm going to bring this chat once again. It was a lovely chat. I want to thank everyone for sending me letters to the Burnettwork.net website and supporting the channel via superchats or tipping. And I promise we're going to get a Post-Geek Singularity stickers, and we'll get that design up at the Robservations store. And if you like these chats, please hit like. The analytics are now, and there's more competition now than ever. So if you like these chats, please hit like or slap like now, as Davey504 says. By the way, if you don't look at Davey504's channel, you should. I love that guy. I don't have anything to do with the bass guitar, but Davey504 never ceases to put a smile on my face. I want to steal his whole shtick, but it wouldn't work. I've got my own. And so, yeah. I'm going to be back on the John Campea show tomorrow, Wednesday. I will probably be back here again. I want to try and get it more regular, but there is work I might have to do tomorrow. I'm not sure when, so I don't know about tomorrow's show, what time it will occur. Once again, you got to give it up, everybody. Give a clap, give a golf clap, or just give a hearty shout to the heavens for the great moderating staff here. Of course, there is the Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden, who does so much work for this channel. There is, of course, Detective Jim Boyers, who watches. He knows when you've been good or bad more than Santa Claus. And remember, he's retired now, but he's a former cop, and then he was a detective. Don't bullshit Jim. And then, of course, there's the great Greg Smith, who's building a 1-to-1 scale snowspeeder from The Empire Strikes Back in his house. Can you believe that? I can't. And then there's, of course, our newest moderators. There's Jordy Lyons and Louis Yu. Jordy Lyons, who sent me a letter. Come on, Louis, step up to the plate, buddy. Send me a letter. Anyway, we've got a great moderating staff that makes this community what it is, so thank them, because it's great. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will remind all of you that every person you meet, you know what, I was going to be more dramatic, because I can, because I like to. You know, I can just do this. I can be like, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring an end to this Robservations episode 312. And by the way, let me remind you all, if you do want to send me videos, please make them either phone videos that are MP4 or movie files. You can go to the website again at theburnettwork.net. Send me videos. Show me where you live. Show me what you want to show me. Not just me, but everybody. Let's bring the imagination connoisseur community, our worldwide community, closer together. Because I think it'd be cool, right? Anyway, as always, I say to all of you, have a better day.